You are going to feel something strange when you cross $100,000. Not pride, not excitement, not the feeling you spent years imagining while you were grinding through the part that felt impossible, something quieter, something you will not have a word for. And if you do not understand what is actually happening in that moment, you will spend the next decade living inside a completely different financial life without knowing why it changed or how to use it. That is what this is about. You are going to find out what the first $100,000 does, not to your balance, to your brain, to your nervous system, to the decisions you make every single day without realizing money is driving them. And the first thing you need to understand is that the version of you who built this number was living under something you probably never named. 2:47 in the morning. You did not set an alarm. Something else pulled you out of sleep. You know what it is before you even reach for the phone. You are running the math. Rent is Friday. Car payment hits Monday. There is a balance on the card you have been rotating for 3 months. You do the math before your eyes are fully open. The same math you have been running your entire adult life in the dark, quietly, so nobody hears. You put the phone down. You stare at the ceiling. Sleep does not come back. That is not anxiety. That is not a bad money mindset. That is your nervous system doing exactly what it is supposed to do when one wrong move can collapse everything. You have been living with zero margin, and zero margin does not just affect your savings, it rewires how you make decisions. It changes which jobs you take, which conversations you avoid, which risks you will never let yourself consider because the cost of being wrong is too high. Every major decision in your life has been running through the same filter first. Can I afford to be wrong here? The answer has almost always been no. So you did not leave the job that was grinding you down because you could not absorb 2 weeks without a paycheck. You did not push back on the salary offer because if they rescinded it, you could not wait. You said yes to things you wanted to say no to. You let opportunities pass quietly because the risk was too expensive. You called it being realistic. It was not. It was the cage. The cage is not your circumstances. The cage is the constant inability to absorb any mistake at all. And you have been living inside it long enough that you started calling it just how life works. Here is what the first $100,000 in personal finance actually does. It does not make you rich. It does not solve everything. What it does is far more specific and far more powerful than either of those things. It destroys the cage. The exact moment you cross $100,000 saved, your nervous system receives a piece of information it has never had before in your adult life. You can absorb a hit. Not every hit. Not a catastrophic one. But the average hit, the kind that used to wipe out your entire month. That one does not end you now. Your body knows it before your brain catches up. And that knowledge, that quiet certainty sitting underneath every decision you make from this point forward, changes everything. Not loudly, not all at once, in ways that will take you months to fully see, but you are going to see them. Starting with the next Wednesday, you have a problem. Your car makes a noise on a Wednesday morning. Not a good noise. The kind that tightens your stomach before you are out of the driveway. You know this feeling. You have been here before. Before $100,000, here is what happens. You call the shop. You sit in the waiting room doing math on your phone. The math does not matter because you do not have options. You have one option. Fix it. Charge it. Figure it out later. You sign the paper. You tap the card. You drive home quieter than you came. Now run that same Wednesday with $100,000 saved. The car makes the noise. Your stomach still tightens. You are human. But the next 10 seconds are completely different. Instead of your options collapsing into one, they open. You can get a second opinion before committing. You can wait a few days. You can decide the car is not worth fixing and take your time finding a replacement, instead of grabbing the first thing a dealer shows you because you need wheels by Monday. A $600 repair is not a crisis. It is a decision, a real one, where you actually get to choose. That is not a small upgrade. That is a completely different life wearing the same Wednesday. Your manager calls you in, restructuring. Your position is eliminated. 4-week severance. They slide the paper across the desk. Before $100,000, you sign it that day. You go home in a panic. You apply everywhere. You take the first offer because the bills do not care about your timeline. You end up somewhere worse because you needed the gap to stop. After $100,000, you ask for the weekend to think. They say yes. They would always have said yes. You just never had the cushion to use the time. You go home. You think about what you actually want. You apply for what you actually want. You negotiate because you can say no to a bad offer and survive it. The ability to say no in a negotiation is the only thing that makes the other side take you seriously. Before $100,000, you never had it. After, it is yours. That is what people who study personal finance and wealth building call optionality. It is not a savings milestone. It is leverage, the kind that quietly rewrites the rest of your career. And none of that is the part that surprises people most. What surprises people most is what happens to the math. Before $100,000, you are the only engine. Your paycheck builds your savings. Your discipline builds your balance. The numbers move because you move them, and the moment you stop moving them, they stop. That is exhausting. And it is also why the stretch from $0 to $100,000 takes so much longer than anything that comes after it. Because after $100,000, something else starts helping. At $100,000 in a high-yield savings account earning 4%, you generate $4,000 a year without lifting a finger. $4,000 that required 0 hours of your labor. At $100,000 growing at 8% over time, that is $8,000 in potential annual growth. Now add what you are still saving, say $1,500 a month, $18,000 a year. Combine that with $8,000 in growth. That is $26,000 added in a single year. Before this moment, you were filling a swimming pool with a cup. Someone just handed you a garden hose, and the hose gets stronger every year you hold it. At $200,000, that same 8% becomes $16,000. At $300,000, $24,000. At $500,000, the growth your money generates in a single strong year can exceed what most people manage to save across several years of work. This is compound interest doing what nobody explains clearly enough, not as a concept, as a felt experience. You watch the account grow $8,000 in a year you barely touched it, and something in how you understand money shifts permanently. You stop chasing money. You start managing it. Now for the part nobody wants to say out loud. You already knew this was how it worked. You have read about compound interest. You have seen the charts. You understood it in theory, but you have never felt it. Because you needed $100,000 before the math was large enough to feel real. Now it is real. And now you have a choice that is going to determine everything that comes next. You can let this moment expand your lifestyle and stay exactly as close to the edge as you were before, just with a nicer view. Or you can stay boring for a little longer and let the hose run. The version of you who got here by driving the older car, living in the apartment that does not impress anyone, saying no to upgrades that would have felt earned but would have quietly reset your progress, that version built something real. Do not trade it for the appearance of something real. Because here is what nobody tells you about the final stretch. You do not fail. You stop. Somewhere in those last miles, the discipline slips. An upgrade that feels earned. A purchase that seems reasonable. And the gap widens again, not by months but by years of compound interest that should have been working in your favor instead. The money habit that separates the people who build wealth from the people who always feel like they are about to is nothing glamorous. It is staying boring long enough for the math to turn. That is the whole secret. And now that you are on the other side of it, there is one more thing happening that you will not expect at all. You stop waking up at 2 a.m. Not the week after you hit $100,000. Not even the month after. But slowly, over the next few months, the math sessions in the dark start happening less. Then barely at all. Because the thing that was pulling you out of sleep was never the dark. It was the pressure. The low-level, constant background pressure of knowing one wrong thing would tip everything. When that pressure lifts, your sleep changes. Your body stops running threat calculations at midnight. And when your sleep changes, everything tied to it changes too. You are less reactive at work. You make clearer decisions because you are not making them on borrowed energy. The patience you could never quite find, the kind that makes you better at almost everything that matters, starts showing up. Not because you became a different person, because the fear that was consuming your capacity finally stopped. Your confidence shifts, not the performed kind, the real kind, the internal certainty that you can handle problems. You stop dreading the unexpected expense the way someone dreads a storm when they have no shelter. You have shelter now, and from inside shelter, something remarkable happens to the goals you set. When you have nothing saved, your goals are survival goals. Pay the rent, cover the bills, make it to next month. At $100,000, you stop setting survival goals. You start asking questions you have never been able to afford before. What do you actually want your life to look like in 5 years? What would you build if failure was expensive but not catastrophic? And once you start asking those questions, your behavior changes around them. You stop buying things that represent what you want to be and start building what you actually want to become. The people around you notice. Not because you announced anything, not because anything visible changed, because the pressure you were always carrying, even though you never said a word about it, was visible. And when it fades, that is visible too. You hold conversations differently. You disagree when you used to go quiet. You walk into rooms differently, not because you are performing confidence, but because the fear that used to compress you is gone. That is $100,000. Not things, not status, not financial freedom in the final sense. The beginning of the version of you that stops reacting and starts deciding. The hardest part of wealth building is never the wealth. It is staying in the stretch where the account moves slowly and the sacrifices feel invisible and nothing congratulates you for the discipline it is taking. Nobody celebrates your emergency fund. Nobody sees the upgrade you said no to. You do all of it in silence. And then one day, on what feels like a completely ordinary afternoon, you open an app in a parking lot. 6 digits, $100,000 and change. No notification, no ceremony, no feeling that matches the size of it. Just a number on a screen and the quietest shift you have ever felt. That shift is the cage door opening. That shift is 10 years of 2 a.m. math sessions finally ending. That shift is the moment your financial life stops running on survival and starts running on something else entirely. You close the app. You sit in the car a moment longer than you planned, and then you do something you have never done before on a drive home. You stop thinking about what could go wrong. You start thinking about what you are going to build next. That is the first $100,000. Not an arrival, an escape. And from here, everything compounds.